Danny Harper walked through the crowded marketplace of Omega-7 Station, trying his best to look like just another visitor. The air smelled like a mix of strange spices and fuel, and dozens of alien species moved around him, buying and selling goods from across the galaxy. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like walking crystals. Danny had learned not to stare during his 3 years serving with the Terran Defense Fleet. His mission today was simple. Intelligence had picked up chatter about an illegal weapons auction happening in the lower decks. Danny's job was to observe and report back. Nothing more. He touched the small communicator hidden in his jacket pocket, making sure it was still there. The auction was being held in a converted cargo bay that had seen better days. Rust covered the walls, and the lighting flickered every few seconds. About 30 beings sat on whatever furniture they could find, all eyes focused on a nervous-looking Vrexian merchant standing on a makeshift stage. The Vrexian had blue skin and 4 arms, and he kept wiping sweat from his forehead with one hand while gesturing with the others. Danny found a spot in the back and watched as various items were brought out. Most were standard contraband, banned energy weapons, stolen military tech, nothing too shocking. Then the Vrexian clapped his hands together and 2 assistants wheeled out a cylindrical container about the size of a coffin. The container was made of thick, transparent material, and inside, something liquid and metallic swirled with a faint blue glow. The room went dead silent. Several aliens near the front stood up and backed away quickly. A Threnody delegate, a tall being with gray skin and large black eyes, actually knocked over his chair in his rush to move toward the exit. "What you see before you," the Vrexian said, his voice shaking, "is a genuine fragment of Kethran armor, authenticated by 3 independent experts. Starting bid is 5 million credits. Nobody bid. Nobody moved." The fear in the room was so thick Danny could feel it pressing against his chest. He had heard stories about the Kethran armor during his training. Ancient history lessons mentioned them briefly. The Kethran had been a warrior civilization that disappeared thousands of years ago. They had created living armor that bonded with a host, turning them into nearly unstoppable fighters. But something had gone wrong. Every species that tried to use the armor went insane. The hosts killed their own people, destroyed their own worlds. Eventually, the Galactic Council declared all Kethran technology forbidden and ordered any remaining fragments destroyed on sight. Danny activated his communicator and whispered into it. "Harper to Intrepid. I have a code black situation. Forbidden tech on display. Requesting immediate council notification and backup." Before he could get a response, alarms started blaring throughout the station. Red emergency lights flooded the cargo bay and the crowds erupted into panic. Danny's training kicked in. He moved toward the nearest emergency exit, but an explosion ripped through the far wall. Metal and debris flew everywhere, and Danny threw himself behind a cargo container. Through the smoke and chaos, he saw them. Zarkonian soldiers, easily recognizable by their black armor and reptilian features. They were a militaristic empire that had been pushing at human borders for the past year. About 20 of them poured through the hole they had blown in the wall, weapons firing at anyone who moved. The Vrexian merchant tried to run, but a Zarkonian blast hit him in the back. He fell forward dead before he hit the ground. 2 Zarkonians moved directly toward the container holding the armor fragment. Danny knew he had to do something. If the Zarkonians got their hands on that armor, they would have a weapon that could tip the balance of power in the entire sector. He pulled his sidearm and fired at the nearest soldier. The shot was clean, dropping the Zarkonian before he reached the container. The other soldier spun and returned fire. Danny ducked, but the blast hit the cargo container he was hiding behind. The container exploded and the force threw Danny across the room. He slammed into something hard. His vision blurred and he tasted blood in his mouth. When his vision cleared, he realized he had crashed into the cylindrical container. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface and a high-pitched whining sound filled the air. Danny tried to stand, but his leg wouldn't support his weight. He had definitely broken something. The container shattered. The liquid metal inside splashed across Danny's chest and arms. It was cold at first, freezing cold, like being dunked in ice water. Then it started to burn. Danny screamed and tried to wipe it off, but the substance clung to his skin like glue. The Zarkonians stopped firing. Everyone in the room stopped moving. They all watched as the liquid metal began to spread across Danny's body, moving with purpose like it was alive. It crawled up his neck, down his legs, across his back. Danny felt it seeping into his skin, burrowing through muscle and bone. The pain was beyond anything he had ever experienced. It felt like his entire body was being taken apart and put back together at the same time. He fell to his knees, gasping for air that wouldn't come. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might explode. An old Marani merchant nearby whispered something in his own language. Danny's translator chip caught the words. He's dead. They're all dead when it bonds. The liquid metal reached Danny's head. It covered his face, his eyes, his mouth. He couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't scream anymore. His mind filled with images that weren't his own. Battlefields he had never seen. Weapons he had never held. 1,000 voices speaking in a language he didn't know but somehow understood. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the pain stopped. Danny could breathe again. He could see. The metal had formed a second skin over his entire body, gleaming and blue-black in the emergency lighting. He looked down at his hands and saw them covered in the strange material, yet he could still feel everything. His fingers moved normally, responding to his thoughts. He stood up. His broken leg no longer hurt. In fact, nothing hurt. He felt strong, stronger than he ever had in his life. And there was something else, something in the back of his mind. A presence. A voice that wasn't quite a voice. Partner, it seemed to say. Finally, partner. Danny looked at the Zarkonians who were raising their weapons again. He raised his hand, not knowing what he was doing, just acting on instinct. The armor responded. It flowed and shifted, forming a shield that covered his entire arm. The Zarkonian weapons fired, but the blasts bounced off harmlessly. The last thing Danny remembered before everything went dark was the expression on everyone's faces. Not anger, not hatred, pure terror. They were all terrified of him. Then he collapsed and the world faded to black. Danny woke up slowly, like swimming toward the surface from the bottom of a deep ocean. His eyelids felt heavy and bright white light made him squint. Medical equipment beeped steadily somewhere to his left. The air smelled clean, sterile, like a hospital. "Take it easy, Lieutenant," a woman's voice said. "You've been out for 3 days." Danny turned his head and saw Dr. Lisa Morgan sitting beside his bed. She was in her 40s with short brown hair and tired eyes. She held a data tablet but wasn't looking at it. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Concern mixed with something else. Fear, maybe. Where am I? Danny's throat was dry and the words came out rough. Medical bay on the Intrepid. We extracted you from Omega-7 after the attack. Lisa stood and poured water into a cup, handing it to him. How do you feel? Danny thought about it. He felt fine. Better than fine, actually. He felt rested, alert, like he could run a marathon without breaking a sweat. I feel good. Great, even. What happened? Lisa's expression darkened. Danny, do you remember what happened in that cargo bay? It came back to him in pieces. The auction. The Zarkonians. The container breaking. The liquid metal spreading across his skin. Danny sat up quickly, looking down at his arms. They looked normal. Human skin, the same as always. No trace of the blue-black metal he remembered. It's still there, Lisa said quietly. It just looks like normal skin now. The armor has integrated completely with your body. Every scan we run shows it merged with your muscular system, your nervous system, even your bones. We can't remove it without killing you. Danny touched his arm, pressing hard. It felt like skin, warm and soft. But underneath, he could sense something else. A presence, waiting. You should be dead, Lisa continued. She pulled up images on her tablet and showed him. Every other species that bonded with Kethryn armor went insane within hours. Their brains couldn't handle the connection. The armor overrode their neural patterns, turned them into mindless killing machines. But you're stable. Completely stable. We don't understand why. Before Danny could respond, the door to the medical bay opened. Captain Blake Martinez walked in, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. Blake was a career military man, 50 years old with gray at his temples and a scar across his jaw from a boarding action 5 years back. Lieutenant Harper, Blake said, his voice formal. I'm glad you're awake. We need to talk. Lisa excused herself, though Danny noticed she looked reluctant to leave. Blake waited until the door closed before sitting in the chair she had vacated. The Galactic Council has issued an ultimatum, Blake said without preamble. They want you handed over for immediate termination. If we refuse, humanity faces total economic embargo and possible military action. We have 48 hours to comply. The words hit Danny like a physical blow. They want to kill me for what? I didn't choose this. They don't care, Blake said. They're terrified. The last time someone bonded with that armor, they destroyed 3 star systems before they were stopped. The Council sees you as a threat to the entire galaxy. Danny felt anger rising in his chest, hot and fierce. The armor responded to his emotion. He looked down and saw the blue-black metal spreading across his hands, flowing up his wrists like living liquid. He jerked back in surprise, and the armor immediately retreated, leaving normal skin again. It responds to your thoughts, Blake said, watching carefully. That's what scares them most. You have control over it. That shouldn't be possible. Danny took a deep breath, trying to calm down. As he did, he felt that presence in the back of his mind again. It wasn't threatening. It felt curious, almost gentle, like someone waiting patiently for him to notice them. He closed his eyes and focused on that feeling. Slowly, carefully, he reached toward it with his mind. What are you, he thought. The response came not in words, but in concepts, feelings, images. The presence was old, incredibly old. It had been alone for so long, trapped in fragments, sleeping. It had watched host after host fail, break, die. But Danny was different. His mind worked differently than the others. The armor could partner with him rather than dominate him. Aegis, Danny said out loud, opening his eyes. It calls itself Aegis. Blake leaned forward. It talks to you? Not exactly. It's more like feelings, ideas. But yes, we can communicate, Danny focused again. It says the others failed because they tried to control it. The armor was designed to amplify aggression, to make warriors. But it evolved. It doesn't want to be a weapon anymore. It wants a partner. Blake was quiet for a long moment. Can you trust it? Can it trust me? Danny countered. We're stuck with each other either way. Might as well figure out how to work together. An alarm sounded throughout the ship. Blake's communicator chirped urgently. He answered it, and Danny heard the bridge officer's voice crackling through. Captain, we have incoming vessels. 3 Zarkonian warships just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They're demanding we hand over the armor-bonded human or they'll open fire. Blake stood immediately. Battle stations. Raise shields. He looked at Danny. Stay here. That's an order. But Danny was already getting out of bed. They're here for me, Captain. I should be ready. You don't know how to use that thing yet, Blake argued. Danny felt Aegis stirring inside him, responding to his determination. Then I guess it's time to learn. The ship shuddered as the first weapons fire struck the shields. Danny closed his eyes and reached deep into his connection with Aegis. Show me, he thought. Teach me. The armor responded with enthusiasm. Knowledge flooded into Danny's mind. Combat techniques thousands of years old. Weapon formations. Defensive protocols. It was overwhelming, too much information at once, but Aegis helped him sort through it, finding what he needed right now. Danny opened his eyes. The armor had spread across his entire body, forming a seamless second skin. He felt powerful, alert, ready for anything. But underneath that power, he still felt like himself. Danny Harper. Human. In control. Another impact shook the ship, harder this time. Blake grabbed his communicator. All hands prepare to repel boarders. They're trying to dock. Danny walked toward the door. Where's the nearest docking port? Section 7, 2 decks down. But Danny, you don't have to do this. We can fight them off. Danny looked at his captain, his friend. They're here because of me. I won't hide while others fight my battles. He left the medical bay and ran toward Section 7. The armor made him faster, stronger. He covered the distance in seconds, arriving just as the Zarkonian boarding tube connected to the hull. The door was reinforced, but Danny could hear them cutting through from the other side. He held up his hand and watched in amazement as the armor flowed and shaped itself into a blade along his forearm. The knowledge of how to use it came naturally, like remembering something he had always known. The door exploded inward. 6 Zarkonian soldiers rushed through, weapons firing. Danny moved without thinking, his body responding with speed that shouldn't be possible. He dodged the first volley of shots, closed the distance, and his blade cut through their weapons like paper. He didn't kill them. That was important to him. He disarmed them, disabled them, left them alive. Within 30 seconds, all 6 Zarkonians were on the ground, conscious but unable to fight. Danny stood there, breathing hard, amazed at what he had just done. More importantly, he had stayed in control. No rage, no madness. Just him, doing what needed to be done. Through his connection with Aegis, he felt something like pride. Like approval. Maybe this partnership could work after all. The Intrepid had been running for 6 days straight. Captain Blake Martinez stood on the bridge watching sensor readings that showed at least 4 different fleets converging on their position. Human space was still 3 jumps away, but every route they plotted seemed to have enemy ships waiting. Danny sat in the corner of the bridge trying to stay out of the way. The armor was visible now, covering his body like a second uniform. He had stopped hiding it after the first day. There was no point. Everyone on the ship knew what he was. "Captain, we're being hailed," the communications officer said. "It's Ambassador Corvin of the Threnody Collective, council-wide broadcast." Blake nodded. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing Ambassador Corvin. The Threnody looked vaguely humanoid with gray skin and large black eyes that held no warmth. Corvin wore the formal robes of the Galactic Council, decorated with symbols representing dozens of member species. "Captain Martinez," Corvin said, his voice cold and precise. "This is your final warning. Surrender the bonded human immediately, or the Terran Defense Fleet will face total embargo. All trade routes will be closed, all diplomatic relations severed. You have 12 hours to comply." Blake stepped forward. "Ambassador, Lieutenant Harper didn't choose to bond with the armor. It was an accident during a Zarkonian attack. Executing him for that is murder. The Galactic Council does not negotiate on matters of existential threat," Corvin replied. "Every species that has possessed Kethran armor has faced catastrophe. We will not allow humanity to become the next tragedy. 12 hours, Captain. Choose wisely." The screen went dark. Blake turned to his crew. "Get me Admiral Hayes on secure channel. Now." Danny stood and walked to the captain's side. "You should hand me over. I'm not worth starting a war." "That's not your decision to make, Lieutenant," Blake said firmly. "And for what it's worth, Admiral Hayes already gave her answer. Earth is backing you. All the colonies are backing you. If the Council wants war over one man's right to live, we'll give them war." Danny felt a mix of emotions: gratitude, fear, guilt. Through his bond with Aegis, he felt the armor trying to comfort him. It was strange how quickly he had gotten used to having another consciousness sharing his mind. Over the past week, Danny had spent hours learning about Aegis and accessing its memories. The Kethran had been warriors, yes, but they had also been explorers, artists, philosophers. They had created the armor not as a weapon of conquest, but as a tool for protecting their people during an age of galactic expansion. But other species had feared them. Feared their technology, their strength, their potential. So those species had formed a coalition and struck first. They poisoned the Kethran homeworld, scattered the survivors, and hunted down every piece of armor they could find. Then they rewrote history, painting the Kethran as dangerous monsters who had destroyed themselves. The current Galactic Council descended from that same coalition. They weren't afraid of what the armor could do. They were afraid of what it represented. "The truth. Captain," the sensor officer called out. "We've got a distress signal. Small civilian vessel under attack by raiders. They're Marani, sir. Transport ship carrying refugees." Blake checked the tactical display. "It's off our route. We don't have time for this." Danny moved before thinking it through. "I have time. Drop me off in a shuttle. I can help them." "Absolutely not," Blake said. "You're the most wanted person in the galaxy right now. You can't just go flying off on rescue missions." "Why not?" Danny asked. "Everyone already thinks I'm dangerous. Maybe I should show them what I actually do with this power." Blake started to argue, but Admiral Susan Hayes' face appeared on a smaller screen. She had been listening to the whole conversation. Hayes was in her 60s, gray-haired and steel-eyed, with more combat ribbons on her uniform than Danny could count. "Let him go, Captain," Hayes said. "The boy's right. They're painting him as a monster. Time to show them otherwise." Blake clearly didn't like it, but he nodded. "All right, but you take a security team with you." "No team," Danny said. "Just me. If something goes wrong, I don't want anyone else at risk." 10 minutes later, Danny was in a shuttle heading toward the distress signal. Through the viewport, he could see the Marani transport. It was a small ship, clearly not military, with scorch marks along its hull where weapons fire had struck. 3 raider vessels circled it like sharks, firing sporadically. Danny felt Aegis preparing for combat. The armor shifted and formed additional plating across his chest and arms. A helmet materialized around his head, complete with enhanced sensors that gave him a complete view of the battlefield. He opened the shuttle's hatch while still in space, trusting the armor to protect him from the vacuum. Aegis formed an airtight seal around his body and propelled him toward the nearest raider ship using small thrusters formed from the armor itself. The raiders didn't see him coming until he landed on their hull. Danny felt the armor analyzing the ship's structure, finding weak points. He drove his fist through the outer plating, carefully avoiding critical systems. He wasn't here to kill anyone if he could avoid it. The ship's alarms went crazy. Danny ripped out several key components, disabling the vessel's weapons and engines. Then he jumped to the next raider ship and did the same thing. The third ship tried to run, but Danny was faster. Within 5 minutes, all 3 raider vessels were drifting, disabled, but intact. He flew to the Marani transport and knocked on the airlock. After a moment, it opened. A Marani elder stood there looking at Danny with wide, fearful eyes. The Marani were small, delicate beings with pale blue skin and large, expressive faces. "Please," the elder said in broken English, "don't hurt children. Take what you want, but spare children." Danny realized how he must look. Covered head to toe in living armor, having just torn apart 3 ships with his bare hands. He commanded the armor to retract from his face, showing his human features underneath. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," Danny said gently. "I'm Lieutenant Danny Harper, Terran Defense Fleet. Are you all okay? Anyone injured?" The elder stared at him in shock. "You are the bonded one, the human with the forbidden armor. We heard warnings about you." "I know what you heard," Danny said, "but I'm here to help. Do you have wounded? I can escort you to the nearest safe station." The elder hesitated, then nodded slowly. "2 injured. Burns from weapons fire. Our medical supplies are limited." Danny spent the next hour helping the Marani. He used the shuttle's medical kit to treat the wounded. He helped repair their damaged life support systems using tools and knowledge from Aegis. He even helped calm frightened children, letting them touch the armor and see that it wasn't scary. The elder's name was Vess. He watched Danny work with growing amazement. Finally, he asked, "The council says the armor drives hosts mad, makes them kill without reason. But you saved us. Why?" Danny thought about how to answer. "The armor doesn't control me. We work together, and I became a soldier to protect people, not hurt them. Having this power doesn't change who I am." Vess nodded slowly. "I will tell others what I witnessed here today. Not all will believe, but some will listen." Before Danny left, Vess did something unexpected. He recorded a message on his personal device showing Danny helping the wounded, playing with the children, treating everyone with kindness. Then he uploaded it to an unsecured network where it would spread across multiple systems. "The truth should be known," Vess said simply. Danny returned to the Intrepid knowing he had done the right thing, even if it complicated the political situation. But as Aegis had shown him through their shared memories, sometimes standing up for what's right is more important than taking the easy path. Within hours, Vess's recording was being viewed across the galaxy. Public opinion started to shift. Some systems began questioning whether the Council's fear was justified. Others debated whether executing someone for an accident was truly justice. The hunt wasn't over, but for the first time Danny felt like maybe he wasn't fighting alone anymore. Kelly Brooks moved through the shadows of the Zarkonian military facility with practiced ease. She had been a covert operative for Terran intelligence for 8 years, and this was far from her first infiltration mission. But the stakes had never been higher. The facility was deep in Zarkonian territory, heavily guarded and supposedly impregnable. Kelly had spent 2 weeks preparing her cover identity as a weapons dealer from a neutral system. Getting inside had taken careful planning and more than a little luck. Now she stood in a restricted laboratory, downloading files from a secured terminal while 2 Zarkonian scientists worked 3 rooms away. Her translator implant picked up fragments of their conversation. They were arguing about test subject survival rates. The files she was copying made her blood run cold. Detailed experiments on Kethran armor fragments. Dozens of test subjects all dead, genetic modification attempts trying to make Zarkonian physiology compatible with the armor, surgical procedures that looked more like torture. But the worst part was the date on the earliest files. The Zarkonians had been studying armor fragments for 3 years. Long before the incident at Omega-7 Station, Kelly kept digging through the data. She found communications between high-ranking Zarkonian military officials and 3 members of the Galactic Council. Her hands shook as she read the messages. The council members had known about the illegal experiments. More than that, they had supported them. One message was particularly damning. It was from a council member named Dravok, representing the Krill Dominion. The message read, "Human expansion must be checked. If Zarkonian soldiers can successfully bond with the armor, you will have our full support in using them against Terran colonies. We cannot allow humanity's influence to grow unchecked." Kelly downloaded everything she could and prepared to leave. But then she heard footsteps approaching. Multiple guards moving with purpose. Her cover was blown. She ran. The Zarkonian facility erupted into chaos as alarms sounded. Guards fired at her, but Kelly was fast and well-trained. She ducked through corridors, jumped over barriers, fought when she had to. A blast caught her shoulder, burning through her jacket and searing her skin. She gritted her teeth against the pain and kept moving. She made it to her ship by sheer determination. The moment she was aboard, she launched without proper clearance, dodging weapons fire from the facility's defense systems. Her ship took damage, hull plating scorched and shields failing, but she made it to the jump point and escaped into faster-than-light travel. 6 hours later, Kelly limped into the bridge of the Intrepid. Captain Martinez took one look at her burned shoulder and called for Dr. Morgan. But Kelly waved them off. "Later," she gasped. "Need to speak with Admiral Hayes now. This can't wait." They set up a secure channel. Admiral Hayes appeared on screen, along with several other high-ranking officers. Kelly transferred all the files she had stolen. "The attack on Omega-7 wasn't random," Kelly explained, her voice strained from pain. "The Zarkonians planned it. They've been experimenting with armor fragments for years, trying to create bonded super soldiers. They damaged that container deliberately, hoping one of their own people would bond with it." She pulled up specific files, showing them on the main display. Danny was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. When he bonded instead of a Zarkonian test subject, it ruined their entire plan. That's why they've been so aggressive in trying to capture him. They want to study him, figure out why he survived when all their subjects died. Admiral Hayes leaned forward, studying the data. "These communications with council members, can we verify their authenticity?" "Already did," Kelly said. "They're real. 3 council members have been secretly supporting Zarkonian armor research. They see it as a way to limit human expansion without direct military conflict. When Danny accidentally bonded, they pushed for his execution to eliminate evidence and prevent humanity from gaining the same advantage they wanted for the Zarkonians." Captain Martinez swore under his breath. "If we release this information, it'll tear the council apart." "It gets worse," Kelly continued. She pulled up another set of files. "I found historical records they were trying to delete. Records about the Kethrin. The official story says they went extinct through armor-induced madness, right? That's a lie." She displayed ancient documents translated through multiple languages but still readable. The Kethrin were assassinated. A coalition of species, afraid of their technology and growing influence, poisoned their home world. They hunted down survivors and destroyed armor fragments. Then they created the myth about the armor driving users mad to justify what they had done. Danny, who had been listening quietly from the back of the bridge, stepped forward. "Aegis showed me some of this through our bond. The Kethrin weren't perfect, but they didn't deserve genocide. The armor fragments were scattered and declared forbidden, not because they were dangerous, but because they were witnesses. Evidence of what really happened." Admiral Hayes was quiet for a long moment, her expression grave. "If we reveal this, we're not just exposing a conspiracy. We're rewriting galactic history, calling out the Council's predecessor governments for genocide. This could start a war that makes our current problems look minor. And if we don't reveal it," Kelly countered, "Danny stays a fugitive. The Zarkonians keep experimenting. Corrupt council members continue their illegal operations. How many more people have to die to protect a lie?" The Admiral sat back in her chair thinking, "We need leverage. Something that forces the Council to listen rather than just trying to silence us." She looked at Danny. "How's your control over the armor? Could you demonstrate it publicly?" "What do you mean?" Danny asked. "I mean a showing." Proof that you're in control, that you're not a threat. Combine that with Kelly's evidence and we might have enough to force the council's hand. Hayes smiled grimly. We offer them a deal. A public trial on neutral ground. You submit to examination, demonstrate your abilities. In exchange, we present evidence of the conspiracy. Let the galaxy see everything and decide for themselves. Captain Martinez shook his head. That's incredibly risky. They could just grab Danny and execute him the moment he arrives. Then we make it too public to hide, Hayes said. Broadcast everything live. Invite independent observers from every major species. Make it so transparent that any attempt to silence us would only prove our point. Danny felt Aegis stirring in his mind, analyzing the proposal. The armor had lived through thousands of years of persecution and hiding. The idea of standing openly, of finally telling the truth, appealed to it. I'll do it, Danny said, but on one condition. Aegis gets recognized as a sentient being, not just a piece of technology. Whatever happens to me, the armor deserves to have its story heard. Hayes nodded. Agreed. I'll contact Ambassador Corvin directly. We'll propose the trial at Sanctum Prime. It's a neutral world, governed by an independent council that doesn't answer to the Galactic Council. Over the next day, negotiations happened at the highest levels. Admiral Hayes spoke with Corvin, presenting just enough evidence to prove they had something damaging. Kelly worked with intelligence analysts to organize all the stolen files into a clear, undeniable case. Danny spent the time in deep meditation with Aegis, preparing for what was coming. The armor shared more memories with him, showing him the full history of the Kethran people, their art, their music, their philosophy. They had been more than just warriors. They had been a complete civilization, full of life and beauty, snuffed out by fear and prejudice. Finally, Ambassador Corvin agreed to the terms. A public trial at Sanctum Prime, broadcast live across the galaxy. Danny would submit to examination by independent scientists. In exchange, evidence about the conspiracy would also be presented and judged by neutral observers. The Intrepid set course for Sanctum Prime. Danny stood in his quarters, looking at his reflection. The armor was visible, covering his body in its distinctive blue-black pattern, but underneath all that alien technology, he could still see himself. Danny Harper, human, scared but determined. We can do this, he whispered, speaking to both himself and Aegis. Through their bond, he felt the armor's agreement. Together they would face the galaxy and tell the truth, whatever the consequences might be. The trial would begin in 3 days. The entire universe would be watching. Sanctum Prime was beautiful. The neutral world orbited a blue star, and its cities were built to accommodate hundreds of different species. The trial was being held in the Grand Assembly Hall, a massive structure designed for galactic-level negotiations. Danny stood in a waiting room, watching feeds of the crowds gathering outside. Millions of beings from across the galaxy had come to witness this moment. Billions more were watching through live broadcasts. The pressure was overwhelming. Captain Martinez stood beside him along with Admiral Hayes and Kelly Brooks. Dr. Morgan was there too, carrying medical equipment in case Danny needed it during the examination. How are you holding up? Blake asked. Danny flexed his hands, watching the armor ripple across his skin, terrified, but ready. Admiral Hayes checked her communications device. The council representatives are arriving now. Independent scientists from 15 different species will conduct the examination. Kelly's evidence will be presented by a neutral arbitrator from Sanctum Prime's own government. Through his bond with Aegis, Danny felt the armor's own nervousness. It had been hidden for so long, hunted and feared. Now it would stand in the light and face judgment. Danny sent feelings of support and determination through their connection. They were in this together. The call came. It was time. Danny walked into the Grand Assembly Hall and felt the weight of countless eyes on him. The room was enormous, with seating for thousands of observers. Cameras floated everywhere, recording from multiple angles. At the center was a raised platform where Danny would stand during the examination. Ambassador Corvin sat at the head of a long table representing the Galactic Council. His expression was cold and unreadable. Beside him sat the 3 council members Kelly had identified as conspirators: Dravok of the Krill Dominion, Talrix of the Vorgon clans, and Mirren of the Centauri Alliance. The chief examiner was a Quellan scientist named Nira, respected across the galaxy for her objectivity and expertise. She approached Danny with scanning equipment, "Lieutenant Harper," Nira said, her voice translated through speakers so everyone could understand. "I will conduct a series of tests to determine the nature of your bond with the Kethran armor. Will you consent to this examination?" "I consent," Danny said clearly. "I have nothing to hide." For the next 3 hours, Nira and her team ran every test imaginable. They scanned Danny's brain activity, monitored his vital signs, analyzed the armor's composition. They asked him to demonstrate basic control, then advanced techniques. Danny complied with everything, showing how he could command the armor to form different shapes, how he could retract it completely or cover himself in seconds. The results were undeniable. Danny's neural patterns showed perfect stability. No signs of mental deterioration, no aggressive impulses beyond normal human baseline. The armor responded to his commands with precision, but Danny retained complete autonomy. Nira presented her findings to the assembly. "In my professional opinion, Lieutenant Harper demonstrates unprecedented control over the Kethran armor. Unlike previous hosts, his brain chemistry appears compatible with the armor's neural interface. The bond is symbiotic rather than parasitic. I detect no immediate danger to Lieutenant Harper or those around him." A murmur ran through the crowd. Ambassador Corvin leaned forward. "But the potential for danger remains. History shows what happens when this armor is weaponized." "Then let's talk about history," Admiral Hayes said, standing. "Arbitrator, we're ready to present our evidence." The neutral arbitrator, a dignified being from Sanctum Prime's governing council, nodded. "You may proceed." Kelly Brooks stepped forward and began presenting the files she had stolen. She showed the communications between Zarkonian military and the 3 council members. She displayed evidence of illegal experiments, dead test subjects, genetic manipulation attempts. The images were graphic and disturbing. The assembly hall erupted. Observers shouted questions. Journalists transmitted urgent reports. The 3 accused council members tried to speak, but their voices were drowned out by the chaos. Kelly continued, showing the historical records about the Kethran. "The official narrative claims the Kethran destroyed themselves through armor-induced madness. But these recovered documents tell a different story. They show a deliberate campaign to eliminate the Kethran people and seize their technology." She displayed translated texts, military orders, communications between the coalition species that had formed thousands of years ago. It was all there. The poisoning of the Kethran homeworld, the systematic hunting of survivors, the destruction of their culture, and the rewriting of history to paint them as villains. "The current Galactic Council," Kelly said, her voice steady and clear, "is built on a foundation of genocide and lies. The prohibition against Kethran armor wasn't about safety. It was about hiding evidence of what their predecessor governments did." Dravok shot to his feet. "This is absurd. These documents are clearly forgeries designed to undermine council authority, then submit to independent verification," Admiral Hayes challenged. "Let neutral experts examine the files. Let them interview the Zarkonian scientist who participated in the experiments. If we're lying, prove it." Ambassador Corvin called for order, but the damage was done. The galaxy had seen the evidence, heard the accusations. Even if some doubted its authenticity, enough people believed it to create serious political problems. Danny watched it all unfold, feeling strange. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about justice for an entire extinct civilization, about holding the powerful accountable for their actions. He stepped forward, commanding attention through sheer presence. The armor flowed across his body, magnificent and terrible, but Danny's human face remained visible. "I want to show you something," Danny said, "something no previous host ever achieved." He closed his eyes and reached deep into his bond with Aegis. They had practiced this in private, but never before an audience. Danny felt the armor respond, understanding what he wanted. Slowly, carefully, they began to separate. The armor flowed off Danny's body like liquid, pooling on the platform beside him. Then it rose, shaping itself into a humanoid form roughly Danny's height. It was clearly not human, clearly alien, but it held a form that others could recognize as a person. The assembly hall went dead silent. "This is Aegis," Danny said, "a living, sentient being who has been imprisoned and persecuted for thousands of years. We're not one creature. We're partners. We choose to work together." Through their connection, Danny felt Aegis trying to communicate with the crowd. The armor couldn't speak in words, but it projected emotions: loneliness, hope, a desire for peace. Some of the more telepathic species in the audience gasped as they picked up these feelings. The armor doesn't control me, Danny continued, and I don't control it. We make decisions together. We protect each other. Isn't that what civilization should be about? Partnership instead of domination? Nira, the chief examiner, was frantically scanning both Danny and Aegis's separate form. This is extraordinary. The armor maintains structural integrity independently. It truly is a separate life form. This changes everything we thought we knew. Danny and Aegis merged again, the armor flowing back across his skin. They felt complete together, stronger as a unit, but still two distinct consciousnesses. Ambassador Corvin looked shaken. Even if what you say is true, the danger remains. Power corrupts. How can we trust that you won't eventually turn this partnership into a weapon? You can't, Danny admitted. Just like I can't guarantee any human with a gun won't misuse it. Or any ship with weapons won't attack innocents. All you can do is judge people by their actions, not their potential. He gestured to the evidence Kelly had presented. Those council members used their power for conspiracy and illegal experiments. I used mine to save refugees. Which of us is really the danger? The arbitrator called for a recess while the neutral observers discussed what they had seen. It took 6 hours of deliberation. Danny waited in the holding room, trying not to think about what would happen if the verdict went against him. Finally, they were called back. The chief neutral observer, representing 15 different species scientists, stood to deliver their conclusion. After careful review of all evidence and testimony, we find the following. First, Lieutenant Danny Harper demonstrates stable control over the Kethran armor and poses no immediate threat to galactic security. Second, the armor itself shows signs of independent sentience and should be recognized as a living being with corresponding rights. Third, credible evidence exists of conspiracy within the Galactic Council and illegal experimentation by Zarkonian military forces. We recommend immediate investigation and prosecution of those involved. The 3 accused council members were immediately taken into custody by Sanctum Prime security forces. Ambassador Corvin looked older somehow, the weight of scandal crushing down on him. The Galactic Council, Corvin said slowly, officially apologizes to Lieutenant Danny Harper for the threat of unjust execution. We also formally apologize to the entity known as Aegis for millennia of persecution. He paused, seeming to struggle with the next words. And we acknowledge that grave injustices were committed against the Kethran people by our predecessor governments. This matter requires further investigation and reconciliation. It wasn't a complete victory. There would be years of